The Confederate White House's household staff was a diverse group of enslaved African Americans, free blacks, Irish immigrants, and a German florist. The difficult job of running a Victorian household would have been impossible without this staff. Today I will introduce you to some of the members of that staff in the rooms where they performed their day-to-day duties. While the Confederate President and First Lady held ultimate authority over the servants, the steward and housekeeper oversaw day-to-day operations. These positions were held by German immigrant Edward Eggeling and Irish-born Mary Amelia. Prior to the war, Edward Eggeling had designed and maintained the grounds of the home that would become the Confederate Executive Mansion. After learning who was responsible for the look of the grounds, Varina Davis summoned Eggeling to the White House.
She seemed surprised to see such a tall, handsome fellow, for I was indeed good-looking and athletic in those days, and she received me very graciously.
After a subsequent interview with Jefferson Davis, Eggeling was hired as steward, overseeing the mansion, grounds, kitchen, and stables. Visiting friends in Richmond when war broke out, Mary Amelia found herself unable to return home to Baltimore, Maryland. Catholic Bishop John McGill advised Mary to request the aid of Varina Davis, who, instead of offering Mary a pass north, offered her a job. Mary Amelia was companion and housekeeper to Mrs. Davis until the spring of 1865. Before leaving Richmond, Varina Davis told Mary to take whatever she could. She was able to bring away 6 fruit plates, a large cake plate, and a tea service, all of which now reside in the museum's permanent collection. Here in the library, Mary Amelia oversaw receptions for special guests, including Robert E. Lee. Under the steward and housekeeper were about 20 enslaved and free servants. One slave Jefferson Davis held in high regard was Robert Brown. Although born in Norfolk, Virginia, Davis purchased Brown in Mississippi in 1861, suggesting he was one of the tens of thousands of slaves sold south during the decades prior to the Civil War. As Davis's manservant, Robert Brown aided the president here in the bedroom, using items such as these found in Jefferson Davis's dressing case. Brown was part of the presidential party captured near Irwinville, Georgia in April of 1865. Following Jefferson Davis's imprisonment, Robert Brown accompanied Mrs. Davis's mother and children to Montreal, Canada. Varina Davis's sister described Brown as Jefferson Davis's Iron Man, for whom he had a strong affection and entrusted his family. Here in front of the house, another hired slave, William Jackson, would have been found taking care of Jefferson Davis's coach. Shortly after the Battle of First Manassas, William Jackson was hired from his owner for $250 a year. A year later, he escaped north, where he gained fame as Jefferson Davis's coachman. Described as possessing no small amount of common sense, intelligence, and humor, Jackson gave anti-slavery lectures in the North as well as Great Britain. Not only did he do his best to sway public opinion in Great Britain against the Confederacy, he also provided many particulars connected to the fortifications of Richmond to Union officials. In January of 1864, someone managed to infiltrate the Confederate White House, where, here in the basement, according to the Richmond Sentinel, this person
attempted to set fire to the president's mansion, the attempt being frustrated by a timely discovery by some of the family. A quantity of combustible matter had been placed in one of the basement rooms and then set on fire. The quantity of smoke which issued from the basement room caused an alarm. The fire was extinguished before much damage was done. The incendiary, however, took the occasion to help himself to a quantity of groceries.
While the identity of the arsonist remains unknown, suspicion must fall on Henry, the Davis's enslaved butler, who escaped north the same night as the fire. This bed in the nursery would have been used by the Davis children's nanny, who until Joseph's fatal fall in May of 1864 was an Irish woman named Catherine. Following this accident, Catherine left the Davises' employ, and the children were looked after by Ellen Barnes, a biracial woman born in Richmond around 1839. It is unclear if she was free or enslaved. Ellen was with the Davises when they were captured in Georgia and subsequently cared for the family during Jefferson Davis's imprisonment at Fort Monroe. Verena Davis wrote of Ellen that she was as dear as she was faithful. Sarah Walker was a White House cook who also looked after the Davis children. Following the children's departure from Richmond in April of 1865, Jefferson Davis wrote Verena Davis of poor old Sarah wishing for pie cake. Pie cake was a nickname for Verena Ann Davis, a toddler at the time. The letters of Jefferson Davis and his family attest to the warm emotions that existed between many of their servants and the Davises during the war. However, the actions of some of the Davises' enslaved servants to obtain their freedom and aid the Union cause give stirring evidence that no matter how gilded the cage, slavery was a cage that some were willing to risk all to escape.